Hi, I'm Gustavo Godoy. Coming up next in this week's edition of News Center 16, this week marks the beginning of the school year for Radnor students, and Radnor High School construction demands flexibility from Radnor students. That and more coming up next in this week's edition of News Center 16.
This is News Center 16.
The old Radnor High School building is still undergoing renovations, and high school-sponsored picnics welcome in the year's new students. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of News Center 16. I'm Gustavo Godoy. We'll have those stories later in the show. But topping the Radnor beat this week, the beginning of the 1998-99 school year for Radnor Township students meant returning to different schools than they left last June. All 4 Radnor schools this summer underwent a facelift of one kind or another. Both Ithan and Wayne elementary schools received new roofs, which forced summer camps to relocate. Radnor Middle School had repairs done on its facade because of loose bricks on the building's front wall. The school most impacted by recent construction has been Radnor High School. Students at the high school now have to orient themselves with a new part of the building, as well as navigate through the many detours placed to avoid construction zones. So far, the masses of new and old disoriented high school students are doing a good job of putting up with the strains and stresses presented by this major construction project. With the beginning of the 1998-99 school year came the many picnics and celebrations to welcome both new and existing students. On Monday, September 7th, A Better Chance Radnor and Radnor International Exchange held their welcoming picnics. A Better Chance Radnor, an organization which brings underprivileged kids to Radnor, held their picnic to welcome and orient new ABC students. This party, which was held at the ABC House on West Wayne Avenue, marks the beginning of the ABC season. The Radnor International Exchange also had held their party in West Wayne at the home of a family hosting a Japanese exchange student. Live music and swimming entertained the crowd, which included present and past Radnor Exchange students. Despite complications due to stormy weather, both picnics continued on their normal schedules after guests and their food were moved inside. On Wednesday, September 9th, Radnor High School Student Affairs Committee held an orientation for new Radnor High School students. At 1 p.m., food was provided for a reception at which new students met their classmates as well as the school's principal, Dr. Robert Baker. After the reception, a tour of the school, hosted by Vice Principal Jim Dorman, was given to orient the students with their new school building. The event was held to introduce the new students to their classmates and to help them find their way through the school on their first day. As the Radnor High School renovation process continues unabated, those who return to school this week will notice a number of dramatic changes that will affect the appearance and operation of the building. First and foremost, the majority of the classes this year will take place in an entirely new building. Constructed last year and over the summer, the structure is located on the Lancaster Avenue side of the Radnor High School property, and the sparkling new facade can be seen from Route 30. Connected to the old building by the gymnasium, the new building's 3 floors will serve to replace the old main hallway, which was demolished over the summer. For teachers, the process of moving classrooms was not an easy one. Entire collections of books had to be boxed, stored in the back gymnasium for most of the summer, and unpacked in the last 2 weeks to fill the brand new rooms. Old furniture, including chairs, desks, and bookshelves, were all discarded in favor of the brand new furniture appropriate to the decor of the new building. The cafeteria is temporarily out of service. For some time after the beginning of the school year, students are asked to bring their lunch while a brand new cafeteria is constructed on the site of the old one. The only portions of the old Radnor High School which will remain in use are the A and B wings. As a response to concerns that students would be forced to walk outside to go from the old to the new school, the 2 buildings have been connected to one another by means of a wooden tunnel spanning what once was the main hallway's first floor. The promise of air conditioning in the new building will be late in coming by some reports, as late as in the spring. News Center 16 will continue to update as the renovations process continues throughout the school year. Coming up next in this week's edition of News Center 16, Trevor Algott will be in with this week's sports. Stay tuned. Welcome back to this week's abbreviated edition of News Center 16. Trevor Algott is in with this week's sports. Trevor?
Thanks, Gus. The Radnor football team got off to a great start this season with a promising show of Raider prowess over Jenkintown, drawing largely from the experience of this year's seniors. Defensemen Ryan Midget and Jason Riss kept the Drakes at arm's length, allowing Corey McMenamin, Nick Alicio, and sophomore quarterback Frank Obuski to score, eventually handing the Raiders their 28-0 season opener victory. Yeah. Westchester Henderson edged the boys' soccer team out of a win Wednesday night, leaving Radnor with a 1-0 loss after the previous hard-fought no-goalers against Methacton and Delco Christian the weeks before. The girls' varsity soccer team opened its season with an exceptional showing from the Lady Raiders this week as veteran player Evita Marnell led the Raiders to victory over Gwynedd Mercy, 7-1. Later in the week, though, the Raiders fell to Henderson, 1-0, despite outstanding goalkeeping by Kim Felsberg. The Lady Raiders field hockey team left the field with a win Wednesday night as veteran Katie Gibson scored the winning goal in overtime, adding on to Megan McGrath and Nina Pantano's goals from earlier, leaving the final score at 3-2 Radnor. The boys cross-country team has enjoyed an undefeated season thus far, adding to that on Wednesday when Patrick Flanagan, Dave Roderick, Andrew Hennessy, Adam Leave, and Dana Lordigee placed the top 6 finishes in a victorious meet against Penwood and Chichester. The final score, 15-50 Radnor. Wins from Colleen Flanagan, Ann Blair, and Kristen Kreiner helped the Radnor girls cross-country team edge 2 more teams out of a victory last week, as the Lady Raiders defeated Chichester 20-37 and Penwood 15-50. We'll be back right after this with longtime sports correspondent J.B. Smink. Hi, welcome back to this week's edition of News Center 16. I'm Trevor Algott here with longtime sports correspondent J.B. Smink. J.B., what is the outlook for the Radnor football team this year?
Well, second-year coach Ralph Rapino has the Raiders off to a very quick start with an impressive win over Jenkintown.
So who are some of the players that will be leading the team?
Well, at quarterback, of course, a key position will be sophomore Frank Grabowski, and he should lead this pass-oriented attack. Corey McMenamin will be in the backfield as fullback, along with Nicolisio at tailback. In the line, I think we have a pretty good line this year to open up the holes for these runners. We've got tackles Jim Anderson and Paul Esposito, and then guards Ryan Midget and Jason Risk. At center is Steve Grabowski, the quarterback's older brother, and tight end Pete Mahoric. And I think 2 players are going to see a lot of action as receivers will be Kawan Lewis and J.T. McGuire.
So what do you think a good goal for this year's team would be?
Well, I think the Red Raiders should strive to improve their football skills in all areas and as the season progresses, and then improve upon the 2-9 record of last year. And Trevor, I know they can do it.
Great. Great. Thank you very much. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome back to this week's edition of News Center 16. I'm Gustavo Godoy. Colleen McKenna has a week off. The Mainline Chamber of Commerce has been busy preparing the series of events and programs to celebrate this year's Mainline Week. The week begins on Saturday, September 12th, and will run through September 20th. Kicking off the week on Saturday will be a 5K run. The run will begin around 8:30 a.m. at the intersection of Lancaster and North Wayne Avenues, and it will end up in Bryn Mawr by the Bryn Mawr Trust Company. If you have any questions regarding the Mainline Week events, please contact the Mainline Chamber of Commerce at 687-6232. Also on September 12th at 2 p.m., over 70 fire companies from surrounding states will display over 200 pieces of fire equipment in a parade. The large spectacle will celebrate the dedication of the Radnor Fire Company's new firehouse. Large crowds of spectators will line the sidewalks of Lancaster Avenue in all of the barrage of fire trucks and in appreciation and support of their own town's fire department. That wraps it up for this week's edition of News Center 16. For more news throughout the week, be sure to check our website at members.aol.com/TV16news. For Trevor Algott, Colleen McKenna, Chris Swisher, and all of us here at News Center 16, I'm Gustavo Godoy. Have a nice week.